What's good, team and family? Andrew's house. I'm coming at you from the crib for today's lesson. Now, we know tomorrow is a very important day. Tomorrow is the day of all days. We are taking our Unit 2 checkpoint exam. Oh my goodness, it's finally here. Now, let me tell you a little info. I did a little hacking into the system. What we're looking at is Kip Believe and Kip Mac 15, which is now Moriel. That's confusing. They're at about 30 and 40% mastery. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. KCCA is at about 90% mastery. I'm going to keep it 100. We have never in the history of life had 90% mastery on anything as a sixth grade. But I'm confident that tomorrow will be the day because we got to blow them out the water. You know what I'm saying? Excellent. Now, what you're going to do, make sure you put your first and last name at the top, the date, which is the 23rd, and your house. Go ahead and write Andrew's poo poo house. Play loud. Okay, I'm just playing. I'm just playing. What you are going to do is take the next 3 minutes, silent and solo, to answer questions 1 through 6 in the first box here, and then answer questions 1 through 3 at the bottom using this image here. It's going to look a lot prettier on your paper. My printer is a little janky. I don't have time. Don't talk about me. Like I said, 3 minutes silent and solo. I need you to pause the video and try it on your own first. The only way you're going to get mastery on the exam tomorrow is if you are first making an attempt on your own. I promise you. I want to be able to trust you. Don't be a jerk. Pause the video right now. Hold up a thumb so that Ms. Brown knows you are pausing the video. Thank you, team. Bye. Alrighty, now, I showed you the answer. Number 1 says, name the producer from the energy pyramid to the left. You should have said the grass. Number 2 says, what is the apex predator in the energy pyramid to the left? You should have said the hawk. Go ahead and make your paper look like mine. We want to make sure that we go to the top of the food pyramid. Or I'm sorry, the energy pyramid. I don't know why I keep calling it a food pyramid. Anyways, and label this apex predator. We also want to label it its second name, tertiary consumer, because you're going to see both of those on your exam. What organism gives energy to the mice? We're first going to look at the mice and then see what is below it, which is the grass. When that, if this were a food chain, it would look like that. So that organism is going to be the grass. What organism does the mice give energy to? So now we're going to look above it, and that's going to be the snake. And which organism is a carnivore? Which means we're going to circle carnivore, annotate it. What phrase should we write here? Go ahead and whisper it into the computer. I didn't hear you. No, seriously, whisper it. I'm talking to you, Aubrey. Whisper it. You're right. Only eats meat. Perfect. So now we're looking for an organism that only eats meat. It's not the producer. We know mice eat grass. So that makes it a herbivore. Does the hawk eat meat? It does because snake. Does the snake eat meat? Yes, because it eats the mouse. So C and D are both correct. Trick question there. Which of the following organisms is required to make this food pyramid or energy pyramid sustainable, but is not pictured? Parasites. I don't even know what that is. We haven't even talked about that this unit, so that's just there to throw you off. To make this sustainable. We know we need abiotic factors, but when we talk about sustainable, it means that sort of like it can go in a circle and it can continue existing over and over and over again. That would be our decomposers. Let's take a look at the bottom. It says name one population in the image to the left. Like I said, this picture will be a lot clearer for you, but I'm going to state the duck population. Name the organism that would make up a community in this picture. So you would say the duck, trees, and then let's see. Let me pull the picture up so I can actually see what I'm talking about. Let's see. We got some ducks. We got some trees. And let me zoom in. That might be is that an animal right there, y'all? No, that's just the shadow of the tree. And I would pretty much say that that's it. Maybe these flowers and lily pads, because those are living things. We'll say flower and lily pads. So remember, a community is going to be many different populations living together, but we're only going to name biotic factors. And then define the term ecosystem below. It is all the living and non-living things that interact in an environment. All right, if you need to pause the video to get any of this down, go ahead and do that. If you stayed with me and you're all good to go ahead and put a check at the bottom of the page. That paper looks like that. Circle that check so that you know that you reviewed your answers with me. And let's move on to the next page. Now, the first thing that you are going to see on your exam tomorrow is a fluency review and practice. What I want you to do right now is go ahead and pause the video, put a thumbs up so that Ms. Brown knows that you are working silent and solo on your own. Alrighty, now that you've tried on your own, let's go through these together. So the group of living and non-living things that interact with each other is going to be an ecosystem. And again, y'all, these words are super, super important. If you do not know them by now, that means that tomorrow you are not going to know the definitions. You're not going to be able to recognize which words match with which definitions. It is super important that if you do not know these words and these definitions, you must go home and study them tomorrow. The top predator in an ecosystem, we're going to write the apex predator. We're also going to write tertiary consumer. Number 3, the recycling of carbon molecules through the biotic and abiotic factors in an ecosystem is our carbon cycle. 4, the first stage of the water cycle when liquid water gains heat energy is evaporation. We're also going to write above this transpiration, but we know that this is evaporation. Make sure your paper looks like mine. From trees. Number 5, non-living things in an ecosystem like soil, water, air, and sunlight. This is abiotic. 6, an organism that breaks down dead plants and animals and returns nutrients to the soil. Decomposer, even though it is biotic. The element that all organisms need to grow is nitrogen. An organism that makes its own food is a producer. The group of all organisms of one species in an ecosystem is a population. The second stage of the water cycle when gaseous water vapor loses heat energy is condensation. Living things are biotic and non-living things are abiotic. So that one was on there twice for you. If you need to pause the video to get those done, go ahead and do that at this time. Our next page, checkpoint to review. You're going to take 4 minutes to finish this silent and solo. Make sure, again, you put your thumb up so that Miss Brown can see that you are working on your own. Ready, set, go. Alrighty, so this is our next page. The first question asks you, what is the difference between a primary and secondary consumer? So what you should have said is that a primary consumer is an herbivore that only eats plants. A secondary consumer is a carnivore that only eats meat. The second part says, using the pyramid to the left, write in organisms that would serve each role in an aquatic ecosystem. So I wrote down grass, grasshopper, snake, and hawk, but this is incorrect. The reason why this is incorrect is because I said an aquatic ecosystem. So your responses should look something like this. If we're thinking about an aquatic ecosystem, then we want to start with a producer that is in the water. That would be, oh, it's not going to let me type it in the box. So we will work on the fly. All right, so if we are inputting the appropriate organisms for an aquatic ecosystem, that means that our producer would start with either algae or phytoplankton. The phytoplankton is going to give energy to the zooplankton. And from last week, Thursday, we should have either a small fish or sardines here. And we can include our tertiary consumer as a jellyfish, because that is what we learned from our lesson last week. Now, if we're taking a look at the bottom piece, it says fill in the boxes within the water cycle diagram to the left. We know that our first stage is going to be evaporation. Second stage is going to be condensation. So here, the sunlight is causing the water to evaporate. Here, clouds are going to form. The clouds are going to get too heavy. Those water droplets are going to collect together. And then we will have precipitation. And then when that precipitation reaches the Earth's surface, it's going to go back to a water source, which is runoff. Now, it says what energy source powers evaporation. We're going to write in a complete sentence. So the energy source that powers evaporation is solar energy. You can also say sunlight. How are the processes of evaporation and condensation different? We can say evaporation changes liquid water to water vapor. Condensation changes water vapor back to a liquid. Next, it asks you to draw in an example of transpiration in the diagram. So there, what you should have done, sorry y'all, it was hot, I had to turn my air on right fast, is this is actually an entire water situation. So in order for transpiration to happen, we need some plants. So I'm just going to just draw a small island, draw a little tree. Well, y'all ain't know I could draw, huh? Look at you. Told you I could do everything. Okay. We're going to put some leaves on the trees, even though the leaves kind of look like clouds. I don't care. Oh, yeah. Y'all ain't know I was dope like that. Killing them. We're going to draw our sunlight going down to our tree, and then we'll draw the water vapor coming up from the leaves. We'll draw some arrows going up. And then we'll write water vapor rising from leaves. And this is our example of transpiration, so we'll label it transpiration here. Transpiration. Awesome. And then it says define the term transpiration below. So we're going to write when the sun heats the leaves, water stored in the leaves is changed to water vapor and evaporates into the atmosphere. Evaporates into the atmosphere. All right, if you need to pause the video to get all of that down, please do that at this time. If you are still with me, you can go ahead and turn the page. Alrighty, same thing. You are going to hold a thumb up so Ms. Brown knows that you are working silent and solo. Let me go over the directions with you first so you know exactly what you need to do. It says use the food web below to write out the role of each organism. Be sure to use the following terms: producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, herbivore, carnivore, decomposer. Now, some of these organisms may have more than one role. If they do, make sure you write both roles in the box. This should take you about 3 minutes. Ready, set, Go. Let's take a look. So our first organism was a snake. You should have written a secondary consumer or carnivore. So our snake here only has one energy arrow going to it, and that is from the mouse. So because a mouse is an animal, it is a carnivore. Our second one is a coyote. The coyote also has one arrow going to it from that same organism, the mouse. So that makes it a secondary consumer or carnivore. Our next organism is the hawk. The hawk has two arrows going to it, but they are also both animals, so the hawk is also a secondary consumer. If you said tertiary consumer or apex predator, I'll take it, because typically in the ecosystem, the hawk does play that role. The mouse has one arrow going to it from the grass, which is a producer. So this means that our mouse is a primary consumer or an herbivore. Next up, we have the grasshopper. The grasshopper has one arrow going to it also from the grass, which makes it a primary consumer or herbivore. And finally, we have the grass, which we know is a producer. One thing I want to point out to you that we have not talked about throughout this unit is this vulture. Now, a vulture is a scavenger. And make sure your paper looks like mine. A scavenger is an organism that only feeds, when we say feeds, we mean eats, dead carcasses. And you're like, Ms. Tucker, what is that? Well, what we're saying here is that a scavenger is going to only eat dead animals. And so, well, how is this different from a decomposer? A scavenger is literally feeding, eating on a dead organism. So a dead mouse, a dead snake, a dead coyote. A decomposer is actually breaking down dead plants and animals, and the molecules and elements that make up that organism's body are going to go back into the soil. So the vulture is not putting anything back for any other organisms in the ecosystem. He's literally picking at the meat that's left on the bones of the coyote, and he's flying away. A decomposer is going to continue to break down the body of organisms until all that's left is the good stuff that's going to go back in the soil. All right, our last page is here. Once again, you are going to give Ms. Brown a thumbs up so that she knows you are working on your own. I'm talking to you, LaDerek. Here we go. Below is a food web. Fill in the arrows showing how energy is transferred. So this isn't a typical food web. I've mixed things all up all over the place. So you need to determine where are the arrows going to go. Once you are done, you are going to log into your computer, go to Apps, Illuminate, log in using Google, and you're going to complete the checkpoint to review exit ticket. Good luck on that. Alrighty, your food web should look something like this. Let's go over this very quickly. So the sun is going to give energy to the grass. This is our producer. The producer is going to give energy to only the primary consumers or herbivores, which here is going to be our cow and our sheep. We're going to label these PC for primary consumers. Now we have humans in this food chain, which are going to receive energy from the cows and in some situations from the sheep. Then finally we have our bacteria, which is our decomposer. And we know that everything, every living thing in an ecosystem eventually is going to give energy to the bacteria. So the humans go to the decomposer, the grass goes to the decomposer, the cow goes to the decomposer, as well as the sheep. Okay? Now it is time for your exit ticket. The exit ticket you're going to take is pretty much just like our checkpoint that we're going to take tomorrow. It is super important that you take your time, and read through the questions carefully. Good luck on your exit ticket. I'm hoping that you all did a great job today. I will see y'all tomorrow. Bye-bye.